he is rich. He's incredibly young. I think it's a he, and I guess he's telling a story on the isemoney.com website, and we're going through it. And if you want, it depends on whether you're on the podcast or you are on the YouTube video, you can either choose, quite the opposite. If you're on the podcast, you could totally just listen on YouTube as well. And if you're on YouTube, you could also just totally listen on the podcast as well. Because both is great. Both is the same thing, but on the podcast, the audio quality is a little bit better and you can just, listen to it on the go. And on YouTube, you just have me and the screen and the actual text that I'm going through, which is incredibly great. Incredibly great. Oops. Just gonna hope it's not loud. But yeah, besides that, I'm actually thinking about buying myself a microphone. So a proper microphone that's at least a little bit better than this one, so that I can actually also use my phone as for the video, because I guess it is just slightly better also in terms of the quality, especially as the fucking webcam that's up there. It's still not bad, don't get me wrong, it is definitely not bad, but it's also not good. So fucking yeah. But I think I'm just gonna start. This is actually the third time I'm recording this, which is nothing bad. It's totally not something bad, but it just takes some time to go through this, and then I just somehow get distracted by some thoughts that I'm having, and this is then also bad because it just takes me even more time. But yeah, I shouldn't complain about this. This is just a really great interview that I'm quite looking forward to, because it's totally interesting. It is really, really interesting, I guess, and we will just see. So a quick overview as always. So how old are you, and just the same data as all the time, like the age and if married or not, if kids or not, and whatsoever. So I'm 36 and my spouse is 27. Quite funny. We have been married for 3 years and a half year. Recently we had our first child. She's now 4 and a half months old. The editor's note: this interview was conducted in December 2018. What area of the country do you live in, or urban or rural? We live in Florida in a suburban setting. What is your current net worth? Current net worth is 7.7 million. And how this is accumulated, so quite, if it's all stocks, if it's cash, if it's just their home, there are a lot of ways you can just, accumulate your net worth, or what you just put into it or what not, and whatsoever. So I'm a real estate guy, so the vast majority of my net worth is in real estate. Presently, I do not own any stocks, as I believe the stock market is headed for a correction, which could definitely be true. Even though I don't actually know why so many people are feared of corrections. If you're just staying in the market without actually just taking your money out of the market, no matter it's just in between no correction and a correction, or just in the middle of a correction, I guess everything will turn out quite great. But I don't know. I really don't know. And a correction is just only from the peak of the chart, or the peak of the stock, 10% off. Quite 10% lower. This is a correction of the market, which is, I think, typically every 5-10 years or something. So totally something. And if you're just investing into the long term, that definitely will be a correction while you're investing and while you are in the market. But yeah, so his cash is 987k, which is actually the biggest amount of cash I've seen on this website. Not everybody has so much cash as he is doing. Vehicle, 10k. We keep our expenses lower by only owning one car. It is a 3-year-old Toyota Camry. Typically, I purchase new vehicles, keep them for 10 years. Mortgages owned, 267k. This includes some unsecured notes as well. primary resistance 265k, and that is 114k. I'm not actively trying to pay this down as my mortgage is at 3.375%. The reason the LTV is so low, which is the lifetime value, is that I bought it for much less at a foreclosure auction for cash and then took out a loan to recover my cash. Investment real estate 13.683 million. This is primarily multi-family with a couple of investment houses and a tiny bit of vacant land. And mortgages is totally 7.4 million. So it seems to be a family business, if I've understood it correctly, which is great, which is quite interesting. But yeah. So my total real estate portfolio is leveraged to 49.4% of all my investment property mortgages range in rate from 4.2% to 5.5%. And I don't fucking know what this even means. I guess it's good. It seems to be quite okay for me. Or it could be totally good and it could be total bullshit. But as I said, I'm not in the fucking real estate game. I do not have any fucking clue about real estate. So what is your job? My full-time job is to manage my real estate investments while seeking opportunities to grow my portfolio. I feel though that I need to be more specific. Most people on the blogs I hear about managing their real estate investments are involved in the day-to-day operations. While there are times I have to be most of my work. So while there are times I have to be, most of my work is in managing the individual managers I employ. Yeah, so it's definitely working for your workers or like working for your employees and not quite vice versa as a lot of people think it is, you know. It really actually seems to be like the CEO is actually only working for the people he is employing. Even though it sounds somehow not stupid, but somehow crazy and something like, you know, it's just everybody means it's the opposite. But at the end, it's not, which is totally something Gary Vee always talks about, and I've heard quite often, also on the ISE money.com website, but also somewhere else. I do not just know where, and I'm still just making it a little bit light. I guess it's better like this, even though it's quite. Yeah, this light is very great. It's very useful, to be honest. Maybe I can even go nearer to that side. But yeah, can I? Is there anything that's restricting me actually? I don't know. I guess not. So what is your annual income? For 2018, my annual income was 543k. And tell us about your income performance over time. Was it the starting salary of your first job? Or what was the starting salary of your first job? And whatsoever. So I started working at a very young age. By age 10, my mother made me business cards and took me door to door offering all sorts of services. I remember odd jobs I got from going door to door, moving rocks in flower beds, pulling weeds, basically anything a little kid with no training and no tools could do. Actually something that I see quite often with a lot of rich people, and I'm quite not feared and not somehow just thinking like, okay, I'm never gonna be rich because I've never done this in my life. But maybe it's just also my surrounding, you know, maybe it's just quite different in the States than in Europe. I don't know. I really don't know. Even though I guess it just really comes up to who you are, you know, even though in Europe it might be like, you know, you're not just stepping around and asking people to do shit for them, but you're doing something else. It could be even the case, you know, you could just still work on Saturdays and you could still work for your family and your parents, and you could still do a lot of shit, you know, besides going door to door. Later in my childhood, I got the normal job of dishwashing, being a busboy, working in retail, painting, and many more. I had a lot of jobs as a child. I believe this helped me succeed later by instilling in me a really good work ethic. Also, it gave me a drive to succeed as I learned why I did not want to be. Definitely makes sense. And this basically is the point that Casey Neistat is quite often making. So As you might know, he's not only a YouTube personality, he is also having a company right now. I know he had. I do not know if he's still having it or if he has another company, if he started one, because it was actually accumulated. No, not accumulated. It was just bought by CNN, if I remember. Which is great, I guess, which is just something to say if you'd be like, okay, I started a company and fucking CNN bought it for, I think it was 2.7 million or something. So definitely more than 2 million. So just something. But he always says that people should actually work on something they do not like because it really shows them what they actually like. And it makes sense for me, even though I do also have to say, I also emphasize that people should really do something they love and something they're passionate about and something they like to do. Because this also makes sense. Because if you just know what you like, and this is, I guess, the point. If you know what you like, then please do what you like and just get the best at what you're doing, at that certain skill and whatsoever. But if you quite do not know what you should doing with your life either, I think just start doing something and try out as much as you can, in maybe certain fields or maybe just jump fields, whatever, and or actually study, I guess. I think it's actually great for people who do not know what they should be doing to actually get a little bit more time, but without quite doing nothing. Like, this is also shit, I would never do nothing, and going to university and doing something is definitely better than that, even though it quite feels for me like, okay, just working as many jobs or working on as many jobs as possible and just seeing what you like is also quite a good idea. But yeah, at one point I had a job digging a trench, a very long trench that took about a whole week. My boss, the owner of the property, called it playing with the dummy stick. I knew I didn't want to play with the dummy stick my whole life. At some point along the way, I had dropped out of high school, and by the time I was 18, I was working changing oil and tires at a Walmart. My father told me that if I went to community college full-time and got good grades, he would pay for school and give me a small allowance to live off of 800 per month, including rent. This would be the amount of money. I did well and got into university after a couple of years. At this point, I went back to work, and I worked during my last 2 years of school full-time, even though luckily my father paid for my entire 4-year degree. At that point, I was a manager of sales at a retail location. After college, I got another job as a manager at a retail store where I worked for over 80 hours a week to bring home about 50K. I thought that was pretty amazing money at the time. But it isn't, like 80 hours, which is just 2 weeks in 1 week. And that's for 50K a year, which is totally something. I'm not acting like, it's nothing. It's still 4K, 4.1666666K, which is something, which is quite a lot. I do not want to say that this is nothing. And I totally think that people can really live well off of it, but it's not like, I guess it's not like the best you can do. So yeah. So while working 80 hours a week, I started what you would call a side hustle. I called it a hobby. I would try to buy and sell vacant land. At this point, I was doing it mainly with bank financing, and after selling a couple of properties for a profit, I learned that short-term capital gains are brutal, so I tried to hold everything for at least a year. This was 2005 and 2006, and this land was going up in value so fast that I checked the MLS every day and was tracking my small portfolio of heavily leveraged vacant land like it was stocks. With such success, still only about a single year out of college, I decided to quit my job, move to a bigger city, and use my found, which was paper, profits to purchase a real estate service related company in which I had no experience whatsoever other than being a customer of these types of companies myself and not feeling like the service I was ever provided was good enough. Which made sense, which is always the thing that you might even quite stumble across relatively often, which is basically solving one of your own problems. Just trying to create something that's solving your problem, because there might be a lot of people who are actually having the same problem. And it makes sense for me. It really makes sense. And but going the way of actually buying a fucking company is just something different, especially if you do not know, anything about the business rather than just being a customer. It is a lot. It is definitely a lot, but I just, like that he just took the leap and, tried it out, even though it, could have failed, but I guess it didn't. Shortly after I gave notice and planned my move, the bottom fell out of the vacant land market where I had all of my assets. I use quotes here because as time would tell, they would fall in value so fast and so far, and I was already so highly leveraged at all I really had were liabilities. All I really had were liabilities. Due to my sudden change in financial situation, I decided it best to get a job working in the real estate service industry. I believed I wanted to be in to get some experience with the goal to eventually set out on my own. Using my typical favor and unrelenting drive, I picked up the phone and called every such company in the phone book in this new city until someone agreed to hire me. They hired me as basically a clerk, making 25k a year. Not even enough to pay my mortgage payments on my assets, or assets, quote unquote assets, and still afford housing and basic food. This is fucking long. Just having to hurry up a little bit. I guess I should hire myself someone who's reading this. Ha ha ha. Funny joke I made there. No, I just like doing the podcast so much. I really do. I like to just talk about things that I'm interested in, talk about things that I might think will just give value to people, and, kind of have something in my mind that it would or will eventually take off, and I don't know, just provide something for people. It would be nice. It would be really nice, and I'm trying. I'm really trying to do that. I'm trying to just not perfectionate. Never mind. I'm just reading. So it only took me about a year and a few pay raises later to be making 50k, and during that time I had obtained my own license for the profession and made relationships with my own clients. I struck out on my own with the help of a couple of the clients. They were able to put up the initial capital and prove the level of assets needed to start such a business. There were 3 of us, and were each 1/3 owners. Unfortunately, the market was still failing. This was in 2007, and within a year I was my only employee, and we could not even afford to pay me a salary. I felt like I was chained to a desk while the greater residential real estate market fell into a depression. All I could do was live off credit cards and watch as most of the people I knew who did real estate went out of business, which must be a pretty fucked up just feeling you're having if you're just trying so hard, and if you've been just in a business for some time and you've just worked your way up to this certain point, and then everything breaks down because of something that's not in your hands, because of something that's like the market, something that's just doing its own thing. 2008 and 9 were a couple of very painful years for me. I did my best to simply keep the little business of which I was the only employee, albeit an unpaid employee. That must be hard. I just think like he must have had so much debt, or he made just so much money that he was actually able to do this. But as he said, he was living off of credit cards, and doesn't seem to be a pretty nice life, I think. Luckily, sometime in about 2009, I had an idea. And this was a very risky idea, but it came from simply not knowing what else to do. I'm very interested. I decided I was going to try to start buying and selling the vacant land again. However, Now instead of being 25 to 50k per piece, it was maybe 2k or 3k, and I didn't even have the money. So I borrowed it at excessive weekly interest rates from a family member. The rates were usurious. Is this even a word? Yeah, it is a word. Usurious. But I was a serious risk and deserved to pay the price. If I was lucky, I would make as much as $1,000 on any regular transaction, but this was but this was enough. I worked really hard at it and began to pay down my credit card debt. As time progressed, I kept at it and had a couple of lucky breaks. Before I knew it, I was able to buy my partners out for peanuts and owned my little business all by myself. Over the next year, things started to pick up both for my business and for my hobby. I was able to hire employees, and especially my hobby was turning a good profit. I began to be able to purchase rental property. Generally, I was purchasing them very cheap at foreclosure auctions, and sometimes I would turn around and take out debt, and sometimes I would leave it debt free. I'm just willing to head to something else and then just start reading his little story again, because will I? No, I won't. I'm just gonna hurry up, because at the very bottom of this whole summary or not summary but interview, there's always something nice, which is about how he learned, how he was doing it, or how the millionaires were doing it, and his tips on what you should do with money and financial tips and so on, which are very important for me and I guess for a lot of people. And his story as such is great to see, and it is interesting, and it may be very motivative, but I don't know. I have a very hard decision that I'm just going to make, I guess. The types of properties I was buying were single-family houses, duplexes, or I had one quad. In total, by about 2013, I had accumulated 20 units. These were buy and large debt-free. At this point, my net income was around 10k per month on the real estate service business and about 8k per month on the 20 rentals. Wow, that's much. At the time, my expenses were small, around 3k per month, but I didn't. What the fuck, 3k per month? I don't know. So I really have to make something clear. Either it's really like that living in the States is very expensive, or people just don't know how to use money. I don't fucking know. 3. There's 36,000 a year. This is quite a lot. So I don't know how living is in the States. I assume that it is quite expensive. I really assume that, because if I'm just actually, or was it 8? 3k per month. For me, that's quite a lot. 3k per month, I would just be able to, if I was living in a one-bed room, which is for renting at my place, it's about $600. It is quite expensive, to be honest. It is quite expensive if you just think about okay, the first few years I'm only gonna make, I don't know, 1 to 2k a month, and I guess, and I think I've just once somehow calculated it or thought about it in more detail. I guess I just need to have 2k in my pocket every single month to be able to live somehow good. Somehow. I really just have to say somehow. And I'm really hoping that when I'm just moving out of my home or moving away from my family's and or my parents' home, that I'm actually going to live a very frugal life. I'm really hoping this. I'm very deeply hoping this. But I did not really track them so close then. It is easier to budget when you're single. You can simply spend as absolutely little as possible. Believe it or not, I actually thought about retiring to travel the world. I figured I could get rid of my business and live off of my rental portfolio. This was way before I had ever heard of fire. However, had I quit so early, I would have been stuck living a pretty meager life. Perhaps 8k per month seemed like a lot of money at the time to a single guy who had always lived as poor as possible. But today, looking back, I'm so glad that I kept working. Sorry for not showing you. Little did I know, even with all the success I had already had, it was just the beginning. In 2014, I traded 1,039. I traded 1031, or is it like 1,000? I don't know. I bought 16 to 20 rental units for my first ever commercial property. It was a real value add play, and within a year I had more than doubled my monthly net to about 20k of the rentals. At this point, I made a lifestyle decision to give up about 10k per month in income for my business to dive solely, so just only, into my hobby, or quote unquote hobby, full time. I sold the business for probably way less than I should have, just simply because I was sick and tired of it. Even though in the later years I had made good money, I was never happy with it. I was concerned about the liability and I had for potential mistakes of my employees or other potential risks outside of our control. Since selling my business to pursue my hobby full-time in 2015, I have never looked back. The 10k per month that I gave up has been more than replaced with additional income from the rentals. So at the end, everything is okay, and which is totally great to see. Okay, people taking the leap and people doing this and that and just actually taking some risk as well, and they're succeeding, which is fucking great, which is really fucking great. So what tips do you have for others who want to grow their career-related income? Make yourself the most knowledgeable person in your department or in your company. Study obsessively everything you can about the industry and continuously ask for more responsibility. Work-life balance, not so important, gonna skip this one. So about if he is having just another side hustle or something, no, he only has this one. So see the answer, but for me, I developed a hobby or a side hustle that grew alongside my normal business. And I really think that this is a great thing a lot of people should actually be doing, you know. It definitely depends on how old you are, where you are staying in life, if you're just poor, if you're rich, if whatsoever. But I guess having something to work on besides actually your job, which would be this for me. This is gonna be, I guess, the thing that I will be working on, even though I'm working. Even though, I'm still having, I'm at the time actually having this lifestyle, I'm having to actually be in school for 40 hours a week. And just the learning time and the commuting time isn't included into this. So it might come up to 60 hours a week, which is, I think, only through commuting, because I have to commute for about an hour or 2 hours actually each day, because one ride is an hour. And it's quite a lot, but I can manage, I really can manage. And I guess if I'm working, it would be even more manageable for me, because it's fun for me, because I'm doing something that makes me happy, that is fun for me, and that I think is just somehow good. It makes sense, but I'll see how I'm gonna do this. Maybe I'll start my own shit. It could also be the thing. Maybe this will just take off so enormously that I do not have to even work. This would be great for me, but yeah, I'll see. Even though I do just have to say, and this is also something that he somehow said, it is a lot of responsibility to having your own thing. You're the only one that is just somehow managing everything, and that's quite a big responsibility. That's really big. So what is your annual spending? So our household budget is just over 10k per month. While I know this sounds like a lot, especially when your total housing costs is only about 1.1k per month, this amount includes household saving, not business categories. For instance, right now we have shifted a great deal of our travel budget to college savings for our newborn. Makes sense. Makes sense that people do this. So they save a lot. What they just... So they seem to total 93k a year in general. If you're thinking about this is not as much as we have seen, totally on these millionaire interviews we have seen way more expensive. Actually, people having 200k a year expenses, which is enormously, but they still made way more money than the 200k, but it's still something. It's still quite a lot. And do we have a budget? We use Mint and find that it works very well. Mint. What percentage of your gross income do you save, and how has it changed over time? We save about 80%, which is a lot. So the secret splurge is basically, I think, traveling, investment, so investment. So starting with nothing, my investment plan was always to reach financial independence. As my wealth has grown, I have continued to invest for a couple of reasons. The first thing is I want to make sure I make enough while I can. Later in life, it might be much harder for me to accumulate wealth than it is right now. I feel irresponsible if I do not try to continually put my money to work. I can probably see my current cash reserves. It has been difficult for me to put money to work lately. I have a very rigid set of criteria that I look for in opportunities, and if I cannot get it, I will not settle and purchase a property anyway. I believe the market will change, or eventually I will luck out and find another deal, or probably both. The best and worst investments. How often do you monitor? How do you accumulate your net worth? No. What is his biggest strength is actually investing, because ESI actually stands for investing. No, not investing, but earning, saving, and investing. And his strength is basically investing, as you might know, because he's an investor. So what road bumps do you face along the way to become a millionaire, and how did you handle them? So getting started is by far the hardest part. You will hear over and over again, the first million is the toughest. That's an understatement. It almost feels like that was the only one I ever really worked for. Now, that's not entirely true, because I do put in a lot of time and effort in the projects, but for the first million, it was truly a roller coaster. The biggest bump in the road was not having the money to use to make more. I know it's obvious, but this is the single biggest limiting factor. And one of the other biggest bumps I faced turned into my biggest opportunity. Losing, on paper, so much money so early in my career was really tough. All told, I think it was about 250k, and for someone only about a year out of college, that was a ton of money. It is a ton of money. So what are you currently doing to maintaining or grow your net worth? I work on my empire every day, and I am not traveling or have made other plans. I actively manage my managers and do all of the bookkeeping while continuously looking for new properties to purchase. Do you have a target net worth? There's no figure, so I'm not going to read it. There's a lot of... So how old were you when you made your first million? And how have you had, or if you had any significant behavior shifts since then? I was 32, so it was 4 years ago. It's quite amazing if you just look at it like it took so long for the first million, but actually then afterwards for the other 6.7 million wasn't that much. Yes, I have had lots of behavioral shifts. I have now got married and had a child. Yeah, which is not actually kind of responding or an answer to the actual question, because it's more about like, did you just buy everything just then immediately, or was it something else? money mistakes. What advice do you have for ESI money readers on how to become wealthy? The reason I volunteered for this interview was to share my story about how anyone can be successful in real estate. When I was a child, one of the things my father said to me that still sticks in my mind is, I know a lot of people with less smarts than you who have done very well in real estate. Now, I will be the first to admit I am no genius. If anything, I would say I am average. To me, real estate offers so many opportunities to get ahead and become financially free that you miss out on with stocks and bonds. Adding value and using leverage, you can catapult your net worth into something you can easily retire off of. There's a lot of negativity on the sports about the headaches of property management and the risk of real estate investing. Everything in life takes some degree of work and risk. I do not believe that the risk and headaches are greater than with stocks. Sure, it's more hands-on, but I like to be in control of my destiny and not leave it up to a bunch of people who I have never met. Put your time into learning how to make money with real estate, act on what you have learned, and if you are careful and pay attention to all the details, you will likely do very well. What are your retirement plans? Any issues? So how did you learn about finances? This is the last and the greatest question, and a pretty long one. Initially, it was a sincere desire to not be a slave my entire life, to be able to be financially independent, and not having to worry about where the next meal is going to come from. This led me to read, and I read almost anything I could possibly come across. I would highly recommend this to everyone. Now you cannot expect all of the answers in life to be within those pages. When I was working on my bachelor's in business, I remembered being quizzed by a counselor about my option of the program. I told him I was disappointed that into my 4th year I had not learned how to start or run a business. His answer was that I couldn't expect to learn exactly how something is done, that this is for me to figure out myself. Their job was to give me the idea and the tools to put my plan into action. This is what I believe the books are for. Totally is. They just give you the tools, but you still have to do it. I'm actually just lacking into the reading section. I have been reading quite a lot, and it was quite a great time, and I just don't read as much now, and I don't know why. I should do more. Even though, okay, I'm just reading a lot, like the interviews, getting inspired, and also the books that I'm going through on my summary section or in the summary section. But yeah, it is something. But actually, reading a real book and reading a whole book as such is something completely different. It gives you a whole nother experience and way more just knowledge as well. And books aren't that expensive, by the way. They're quite cheap, I would say, for the knowledge that you're even getting. But yeah, so with that said, you will find some paths to take by reading books. Whether or not they will prove to be useful in your life is questionable. Following what others have done will get you a long way. What I often found, though, is that by the time it is written and published, many of those ideas no longer seem to work. Okay. Well, in terms of actually the business thing, might be true. In terms of self-development and all self-help things, definitely. Do you give to charity? Why or why not? So now this is the question where I know I'm going to upset some people. I do not give to charity, and I believe that the vast majority of them are scams that pay out most of the money they take in on salaries to raise money rather than helping the people they say they are supposed to be helping. I give the money to the government and they redistribute it for me as they see fit. I would love to be able to make those decisions myself about where my charity money goes, but unfortunately the government believes that they can decide where my money should go better than I can decide for myself. Yeah, this should be quite it with the episode, I guess, And with this being said, it was quite a funny episode, and didn't went as well as I wanted it to be. I was just so pumped before the episode. I'm still pumped to do this, but it was so much reading, and I really see that I'm not really liking to just read the whole episode long, which is bad. But the thing is, I hope that I've given you something to think about and to just to go through. Even it was actually the Millionaire interview 128. If you want to go through it on yourself, if you haven't understood something, if I've spoken not so clearly as I should be. And yeah, with that being said, I wish you the best, health, wealth, happiness, and success. And still remember how you're gonna be remembered, and maybe therefore you just have to give something to people and or to the world that haven't even given you something in return and will never ever and haven't you. And with that being said, I wish you the best, and I'll see you today or tomorrow.